If you thought tanking your campaign at one venue was bad, just wait until you hear how Donald Trump's day went on Friday, where he managed to bomb at 2 venues in a row. With Kamala Harris having the upper hand in this race, Donald Trump has been forced to go on the quote-unquote offense by holding more rallies than his deteriorating mind can handle. But before we dive into those rallies, let me just note that RFK Jr.'s endorsement of Donald Trump has already started backfiring. Don't believe me? Well, here was RFK Jr. ranting about puberty amongst female students in what was one of the weirdest and creepiest campaign exit speeches I've ever heard.
America's puberty rate is now occurring at age 10 to 13, which is 6 years earlier than girls were reaching puberty in 1900.
Really hammering those kitchen table issues. Yeah, I'm sure this will help Donald Trump flip the female and youth vote back into his favor. All right, one more clip of RFK that I feel inclined to share is a more sinister one where he criticizes President Biden and Kamala Harris for refusing to acknowledge Vladimir Putin's sham of an election as a legitimate one.
President Biden mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide.
If by landslide you mean a rigged election where Russians are forced to vote for dictator Putin or they'll be tossed out of a window or jailed, then sure, Robert, let's call it a landslide. In my view, having a Putin apologist endorse the Republican ticket is not going to play well with Republican voters who support Ukraine, like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, which is all the more reason why Robert joining forces with MAGA will only cause more harm to Trump's flailing campaign. All right, so clearly one Russian asset has dropped out of the race to endorse the other Russian asset, and he joined that Russian asset on the stage during his rally in Arizona to make their alliance official. But let's rewind to the first event of Donald Trump's day, which was held in Las Vegas, where he weirdly asks the crowd if they've ever heard of Kamala Harris, whom he also disrespects by deliberately mispronouncing her name.
Kamala, have you ever heard of her? Kamala? Nobody ever heard of her before.
Yeah, they have, Donald. She's the one who's beating you in the polls, including this morning's Angus Reid national poll that has Kamala Harris leading Trump 47-42, a 5-point margin. Oh yeah, and she also draws bigger crowds than you. Speaking of those crowds, Donald Trump then went on an unhinged rant against Kamala Harris for saying thank you too many times during the standing ovation she received during her acceptance speech at the DNC.
And she mentioned thank you about 50 times. Did you see the beginning? Thank you, 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 thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
He sounds like he's self-destructing, a literal physical embodiment of his floundering campaign, and he's clearly upset that he's never had a crowd cheer like the one Harris had at her convention. So not only was Donald Trump triggered by the applause that Kamala Harris garnered, but Trump didn't like the content of her speech either. Here he is claiming that Kamala Harris will, quote, say or do anything to get elected. Projection much?
Like last night, the speech, she made 26 different things that were lies. She lied, but that's okay because a lot of people lie. They'll do anything to get elected.
Says the guy who told north of 30,000 lies during his presidency, who lied in every answer of the last debate, and who will literally say or do anything to get elected, including launch a violent, deadly coup against his own government and threaten lawmakers to find votes that do not exist. Did I mention he'll lie about migrants too? Here he is yet again falsely accusing migrants of stealing, quote, black people's jobs.
Millions of people to come into our country, and they're taking black people's jobs, African American jobs. They're taking those jobs, and a lot of those jobs are Hispanic jobs too.
I didn't know there were jobs that were designated for African Americans and Hispanics, but leave it to Donald Trump to teach us something new every single day. And did you guys notice Donald Trump managed to pack racism and xenophobia into one line? He is getting efficient, guys. So efficient that after leaving his stench in Las Vegas, he packed his his bags and flew to Glendale, Arizona to hold another dumpster fire of a rally, and it was literally a 104-degree Fahrenheit dumpster fire. According to the Glendale Fire Department, over 100 people were treated for heat exhaustion, with several going to the hospital, all while waiting in line to hear a 78-year-old adjudicated rapist ramble and mispronounce the word opponent.
Our opponents, thank you. Our opponents.
People were hospitalized to hear this man speak. How sad. What's also sad is the fact that Donald Trump repeated his same crazy line of attack against Kamala Harris for saying thank you too many times, reminding his supporters yet again of how big the standing ovation was for Harris at the DNC.
How about her opening where she said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Grandpa's about to pop a blood vessel. We get it, Donald. You hate the fact that you have tiny crowds with little applause and she has large crowds with thunderous applause. In fact, in a desperate move to get that low-energy crowd going, Donald brought out his new lapdog, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to help roll out a new campaign slogan of Make America Healthy Again.
And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
Sure, let's take our health advice from a man without a PhD who told us to eat horse dewormer and inject bleach into our veins during a deadly pandemic. Never forget how physically dangerous Donald Trump's presidency was for all of us and how dangerous his second term would be for our democracy. So dangerous that Donald Trump is now trying to mask how dangerous it would be by straight up stealing Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's brand of joy to describe what life would be like in his second term.
And every day will be filled with joy and opportunity and hope. But for that to happen, we must defeat Kamala Harris.
Can you think of anything more joyous than surrendering your rights, your social security checks, and your democracy to a 78-year-old convicted felon? I know I can, and this joyous wannabe tyrant seems to be pulling out all the stops ahead of November, including calling on law enforcement to watch the votes being counted. So much joy.
We need every sheriff to get over there, every law enforcement official. Because we got the votes, we got to make sure everything's on the up and up.
Yikes. In all seriousness, this is why we have to stay motivated every day from now until November 5th. There's no denying Harris has the momentum, the fundraising, and all the people on her side, but Donald Trump and his sycophants will no doubt deploy sketchy, undemocratic tactics like the one Trump just described in Arizona. But have no fear, he's alienating voters with every rally he holds, and as Gavin Newsom puts it, he just seems off.
He's derivative of himself. He's less interesting. I'm less interested. He's not as entertaining. He seems way off his game. For some time now, ever since his convention speech, something just seems off.
It is off. He's stale, and his game is slacking bigly, and Kamala Harris is the one who's on the up and up, swooping all of the voters that Donald Trump continues to shed in the battleground states. Stay vigilant and stay fired up, and in 73 days, we'll show him and RFK Jr. what an actual landslide looks like. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Gen Z Perspective. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the show and give us a 5-star review on Apple, because as you can see, the MAGA lunatics have bombarded the podcast with 0-star reviews. I think we're worth a little more than that, but I also think it shows you how terrified they are of our generation. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next time on the Gen Z Perspective. The Gen Z Perspectives theme song was created and produced by Pokari.